Are you ready for Tub? Now we start Parshas Kedoshim, chapter 19, Tub. In chapter 19, Parshas Kedoshim, there are a lot of mitzvahs. If you want to be precise, there are 48. 48 mitzvahs in Parshas Kedoshim, Perek Yutes alone. So even though you could say this is mostly mitzvahs, Parshas Kedoshim all has to do with mitzvahs, which when we are Peiresh, we remove ourselves from something that is forbidden. We increase the Kedusha in our neshama, in our lives. So it's called Parshas Kedoshim for that reason. See the Ramban at the beginning of Perek Yutes. What Kadosh really means, it means mufresh, it means mufdal. We are separating ourselves from the other nations by taking on mitzvahs which clearly indicate that we are different. Mufresh, mufdal, completely separate, totally unique. So Am HaKadosh means a unique nation, and Parshas Kedoshim has 48 mitzvahs. So some of the examples you see on this card, it starts off with Kedoshim, and you see like this kind of holy halo around the head of the person who's now a Kadosh, because he's keeping all these mitzvahs. Amongst them you've got mitzvah of Avas Yisrael. That's why you've got these think bubbles, where inside the think bubble is a heart, and also the issur of don't hate. So that's why there's an X through the heart. Don't hate your brother. You've got to love him, not hate him. The next one you see the mitzvah of, or the issur of loy tifnais, al tifna ela Elohim achirim. Don't go after other gods, even in your thoughts, and for sure not with your mouth or actions. Shaloy lifnais really means al tifnu el ha'elilim. Don't go after in your mind other gods, other powers. So you see this person with a thought bubble, and he's thinking about this Avoda Zara over here. Go down a picture and you'll see this person calling out, oh, we make idols. So the issur of making a pesel for other people is in Perek Yutes, chapter Tab. The issur of Gezel and Geneva is also in Perek Yutes. The issur of making a Shavuot that's not true is also in Perek Yutes. There's a lot of mitzvahs there, much, much more than I've just described. I've just described like 6, but there are 48. So Ayin Sham, go over there, check them out. It's all in chapter 19, Tab, 48 mitzvahs. So how will I remember that there are 48 mitzvahs, Parshas Kedoshim, in chapter 19? So I imagine 48 sailors in a tub, and they're singing together as they're rowing inside the tub. Can you see a giant tub with 48 people inside, and they're singing Kedoshim to you, to the tune of Happy Birthday to You. Kedoshim to you. So they're singing Be Holy to Yourselves. And how do you become holy? Mufresh, you separate from Isurim. So I see sailors rowing inside a big tub 19, and they're singing Kedoshim to you. There's 48 of them. Okay, that's my funny story. You can make up your own. Okay, we're ready for chapter 20. We're still in Parshas Kedoshim. There are only 2 prakim in Parshas Kedoshim, and this is the second one. Parshas Kedoshim, chapter Chaf, is nose. What's taking place in chapter 20? So you look at your card and you'll see that there are major consequences for terrible violations that are listed in chapter Chaf, chapter Nose, chapter 20. For example, you see right at the beginning, the issur of Moilech. Moilech is mentioned several times in the Torah, very serious. It's a father who gives some of his children, or one of his children, to Moilech, which are Ovdei Avoda Zara, who set up 2 big bonfires and take the kid through the bonfire. Some say he actually gets burnt in the bonfire, and then he's sacrificed to Molech, or this is the way he's actually sacrificed. They even have very loud metal music that's playing so that the parents of this child don't regret what they're doing because they can't hear his screams because of the very loud music. I mean, it's horrifically cruel. So this is in chapter 20. Moving on to the next picture, you see the issur of Oiv and then Yidoni. Oiv and Yidoni are 2 other Isurim which are very serious. They get skila for it. So Oiv and Yidoni. There's Isurei Kares, which are mentioned in chapter 20. Also Chenek, which is strangulation, and Sreifa, which is also Misas Based in, but means burning. So these are very serious Averas that are listed in chapter 20. The last one here is someone, Rahman al-Islam, cursing his parents. In that little bubble there, you see him saying nonsense, which is taken as a curse against his father and mother, Rahman al-Islam. So these are some of the Averas mentioned in chapter 20, violations against the Torah and their consequences. How will we remember this is in chapter 20? So in my funny story, this is just my imagination, you can come up with your own. So in chapter 20, nose, I see stones coming out of one nostril and a scarf coming out of the other. The scarf strangles a person who is chayav chenek, and the stones knock out and kill those who are chayav skila, serious averos. We are now ready for Parshas Emor. Parshas Emor, Perek Chaf Aleph, starts with the laws of Kohanim. So in chapter 21, in your picture, you will see that there's the Kohen over here who's not allowed to be Tameh to people except for his most closest krovim. So for example, a father, a mother, a brother, sister, son, daughter, and wife. Some say wife is Drabanan, but these are 7 krovim that a Kohen is allowed to be Tameh himself. But in the next picture you see that a Kohen Gadol is not allowed to be Tameh himself to any of those 7 krovim. Moving down the picture you see what happens if a Kohen has a mum. He can't do any of the Avoda. That's why there's an X over there where he's bringing ketores to be burnt in the Mizbeach HaZahav inside the Beis HaMikdash. And the last one denotes that a Kohen gets first preference, first best treatment in every situation. So for example, being called up to the Sefer Torah, who gets called up first? A Kohen. So that's why this picture is what it is. If you're going to make a zimun for Birkas HaMazon, then if there's a Kohen present, you invite him to be the first one. A Kohen must get preferential treatment for the fact that Kadosh Baruch Hu chose the Kohanim to be, if you want to call it, the elite of the nation, because they're busy in the Avoda of the Beis HaMikdash and grooming themselves to be the teachers, the role models of Klal Yisrael. So many of the laws of the Kohen and Kohen Gadol, who they're allowed to marry, who they're not allowed to marry, these details you will find in Perek Chaf Aleph. What type of mum, what type of blemish or physical condition would cause a Kohen to be disqualified from doing the Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash? All that's listed in chapter 21. So how am I going to remember it's in chapter 21? Chapter 21 is nut. N is 2, T is 1. So the word nut equals 21. In chapter 21, what I imagine, I see Kohanim in the Beis HaMikdash area and they are cracking open nuts. So sometimes you have been to a party or a restaurant, sometimes they have these fortune teller crackers, you open it up. So I imagine you open up a nut and inside is a little parchment that says on it a halacha for Kohen. So the Kohanim, they're learning Hilchas Kohanim by opening up these nuts, and when they crack open the nut, inside the nut is this little parchment or a little slip of paper that tells them who they're allowed to marry, who they're not allowed to marry. Oh, a Kohen Gadol is allowed to marry a psula. Oh, Kohen is not allowed to marry a halala or a zaina or a gerusha. Oh, a Kohen can't have one eye larger than the other, that's considered a mum, or he's got an eye missing, chas v'shalom, or one large nostril and one small one. All the different blemishes that are listed about a Kohen, all the people is allowed to marry, not allowed to marry, all these various rules, each one would be written on one of these small pieces of parchment or a slip of paper that unfolds as you open up the nut. So open up the nut and learn the halachas of Hilchas Kohanim. All in chapter nut 21, Parshas Emor. Moving forward, chapter 22 continues the halachas of Kohanim who are Tameh and animals that have a mum. So in chapter 22, you've got pictures here, starting with a Kohen who is Tameh. You can see the word Tameh underneath him, and he's doing one of the Avodas in the Beis HaMikdash. In this case, it's bringing ketores to the Mizbeach HaZahav again, but he's Tameh, so he's not allowed to do that. Any Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash, he's not allowed to do if he's Tameh. Moving forward, you see a carbon. In this case, it's a cow that is a Baal Mum. Baal Mum means it has a limb missing or some other major problem with its physical condition that you would not give a gift to a king that was blemished, that was broken, that was badly scratched. Why? Because that shows that I don't have a proper hakara, a proper recognition of royalty. You don't give a gift to royalty that's blemished or broken or damaged. That makes no sense. So it's actually very serious Issa, and it's listed in this chapter 22. So a balmum of an animal is not kosher to be brought on the Mizbeach. That's why you've got the animal here next to the Mizbeach. Going down, you see 2 other mitzvahs of Kiddush Hashem and Chil Hashem. In this particular case, you see a boy saying, oh, that boy learns Torah and does not behave nicely. then that's obviously a Chil Hashem, because he's supposedly a Ben Torah, but it's not behaving correctly, so that's a terrible Chil Hashem. The next picture shows you, oh, that boy who learns Torah is so nice. So that's a Kiddush Hashem. He behaves well. He's polite, says thank you. He's mechabed his parents. He's mechabed people in the street who say good morning. He will say good morning back. Whatever it is that you're doing as a Kiddush Hashem, b'yachid or b'rabim, so those two mitzvahs, Kiddush Hashem and Chil Hashem, are both mentioned in Parshas Emor, Perek Chaf Beis. How are we going to remember? The Perek Chaf Beis are the laws of a Kohen Tameh and a Behema that has a mum. So in my funny story, again, it's the only funny story, you can come up with your own association. I see in chapter 22, which goes with, well, it can either be onion or it can be a cab. Cab is Chaf Beis. So I think of Chaf Beis as a cab, like a mini cab or a taxi. You could either have a cab, which is spelled Chaf Beis. Chaf Beis is 22. And inside I will see a Kohen next to an animal. And the Kohen is Tameh. You can't see Tumah, but I will have a plaque on him that says Tameh. And next to him you see an animal who's got a leg missing, or a tail missing, or sliced in half. It's pretty gory. But the more gory it is, the easier it is to remember. So either I see inside a cab a Kohen Tameh sitting next to a blemished animal, or if you just want to stay with onion, which is also 22, onion is 22, N inside the onion is 2, and the O and the I in onion, both are vowels, don't count for anything. So in chapter onion, I imagine a Kohen who's got warts, it's also a blemish, that are shaped like an onion, growing on his arms, legs, stomach, face. I mean, it's pretty gruesome. And when he touches the animal that he was going to bring to the Beis HaMikdash and shecht, it's so contagious, you see the animals start growing these warts the size of onions, literally, and they look like onions. So that's just my silly way of remembering that onion 22, cab 22, is where I'll find the information for a Kohen Tameh and animals that have a blemish. Moving on to 23, and this ends Parshas Emor. 23 has a lot of information. So we're going to go through this picture and you'll see many of the mitzvahs are described by this picture. So Shabbos Kodesh, you're not allowed to do work on Shabbos, you have to rest on Shabbos. Moving in the direction of the arrow, you will see 3 matzahs. What are the 3 matzahs? Oh, that reminds me of Pesach. Okay, so the mitzvah of not doing malacha on Pesach and resting on Pesach, 1st and 7th day, you'll find that all in chapter 23. Moving forward, the next picture you see the counting of the Omer and the bringing of the carbon Omer. The next picture you see 2 loaves of bread to remind me of Shtei Lechem, the 2 loaves of bread that were brought at the time of Shavuot. And of course the picture at the bottom is Mamad Har Sinai, so that reminds me of the festival of Shavuot. Oh, don't do malacha, rest on Shavuot. Moving forward, oh, you see Rosh Hashanah. It's really going in the direction of the events as they unfold in the Jewish calendar. Rosh Hashanah, the blowing of the shofar, includes Yom Kippur, and finally Sukkot and shaking of lulav and esrog. So all these mitzvahs you're going to find in chapter 23. How will I remember they are in chapter 23? So chapter 23 is name. 23 is name. N is 2, M is 3. So A and E in the word name don't count, they fall away. You're left with 23. So chapter name is always 23. How will you remember 23 name in Parshas Emor? Are all the names of all the festivals, of all the Yomim Tovim, starting with Shabbos, and then you've got Pesach, and then you've got Shavuos, and then you've got Rosh Hashanah, and Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, and the shaking of the lulav and esrog. That's all in name. So each one of those festivals has a name. And if that's too abstract for you, you can come up with your own different story. That happens to work for me because the word name is, I just see a name plaque with the word name on it. But over here, because there are so many different names of all the festivals, it's easy for me, in my mind's eye, I imagine a name plaque in the circle that we saw of this picture for each one of these. So you can put a name plaque for each one: Shabbos, Pesach, Omer, Shavuos, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, and Lulav and Esrog. There are lots of different names. Chapter 24 will conclude Parshas Emor, and that's Nero. Nero is 24. There are 3 pieces of information that are depicted in this picture for chapter 24, Nero, and that is the lighting of the menorah that took place every single day in the Beis HaMikdash, and Aaron HaKohen was responsible for the initial lighting of the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. The second picture denotes the Lechem HaPanim. In the Shulchan, the Lechem HaPanim was brought once a week, but it was consistently left on the table constantly there. And even when they removed it every Shabbos, the new 12 loaves were placed on it as the other ones were taken off. So it was never empty. So Lechem HaPanim Tamid was constantly on the shulchan. And the third picture depicts, you can see here, a person who is cursing HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Rahman al-Islam. So this is referring to the person who was Megadef. He was a cursor of the Machana in the Midbar. The Mitzri who was killed by Moshe Rabbeinu, that Mitzri brought about a child who later on is the Megadef in chapter 24. So he got skila, and then there's a warning about murder and being Megadef Has V'Shalom. If anyone hears Hashem's name being cursed and they heard it and saw it themselves, then they have to rip their garments as though they were mourning a close relative. This is a very serious Avera. Let's get skila. So these are three items that depict the main body of information taking place in chapter 24. How do I remember it's in chapter 24? So we know that number 24 is Nero, N is 2, R is 4, E and O in the word Nero fall away because they don't count. So you're left with 24. So in chapter Nero, I imagine Nero, who was a Roman emperor, I see him in a handstand. So his hands are on the floor and his legs are in the air. And I see on one leg he's balancing a menorah. And on the other leg I see him balancing a shulchan. And I see him being Megadef, Rahman al-Islam, cursing away. So all that I see in Nero. Okay, we're now up to Parshas Bahar. Chapter 25 and 26 is just two prakim. Chapter 25 is filled with mitzvahs to do with Shemitta and Yovel. In picture number 1, you've got about 6 different scenarios. You've got someone who's cutting grapes. You're not allowed to cut grapes in the usual way. You see someone who's planting a tree. Not allowed to plant trees in Shemitta. You see a person who's torn up a loan. It says loan on that piece of paper because you have to cancel all loans of money that's owed to you before Shemitta. So in Erev Shemitta, you cancel loans. You see this person over here, he's dropping seeds into the ground. You're not allowed to plant in the ground. Over here, you see someone harvesting. You're not allowed to harvest in the regular way. You're not allowed to plow. That's the last picture down there. And in the second half of this picture, you see 5 pictures. The first 6 on the first half are about Shemitta, the mitzvahs of Shemitta. And the next one shows you the mitzvahs that are related to Yovel. Yovel is the 50th year, which is another year that you leave the land fallow. You're not allowed to work the land. So you see here planting. Oh, you can't plant trees. Over here, oh, if you've got any home that you own, now it reverts back to its original owner in Yovel, in the Jubilee year. Are you allowed to harvest? No, you're not allowed to harvest in the regular way in Yovel. You're not allowed to seed in Yovel. You can't plant seeds and you can't plow. So very similar mitzvahs to Shemitta and Yovel. All this is in chapter 25. How do I remember it's in chapter 25? 25 goes with nail. N is 2, L is 5. A and I in the word nail fall away because they don't count their vowels. And now you're left with 25, N, L. So in chapter 25, I imagine growing from the ground, I see different nails, lots of different nails. And from a panoramic view from the sky, if you look down, you can actually see that all these nails sticking out of the ground in a big field. Can you see it in your mind's eye? A field with nails growing out of the ground. And then up on a drone or a helicopter view, you can actually see down. And what you notice is that all the nails are shaped in the number 7. And next to it, you see another field where the nails growing from that field are shaped in the number 50. So I see 7 and 50 all in the shape of nails growing out of the ground, which reminds me of Shemitta and Yovel. It's just my funny association. It works for me. If something else works for you, go with your imagination to make that connection. Okay, moving to number 26. It's the last parak in Parshas Bahar. It's very short. You've got chapter 26, goes with Nosh. Chapter 26, in this card depicts 3 things. The making of a pesel, carving out Avoda Zara, an actual idol. Moving forward, you see in the second picture, someone has made a column and is bowing down, either to the column or the Avoda Zara, which will be on top of that column, but actually making a matzeva, making a column for Avoda Zara is an issa in of itself. It's forbidden on its own. And the third picture depicts someone who's lying down on what's called an even maskis, which is a stone that has been made into a mosaic. It's beautifully carved, very pretty pattern, and it was very often used as the stone upon which people who served the Avodah Zara would lay flat completely with their arms stretched out in front of an actual Avodah Zara, an actual idol that would be placed in front of the stone. So these are the three Isurim that you'll find basically in chapter 26, Nosh. How will we remember this is in Nosh? So I imagine a Nosh machine in the shape of an idol. And if you press the button that activates the machine, then one of these little idols inside, you see, instead of Nosh, you see lots of little idols, different shapes, colors, whatnot, comes out of that drawer and you pull it out. So that's a Nosh machine for Avodah Zara. Don't do it. Don't do it. Okay, we're ready for Parshas Bechukoisai. Bechukoisai is the last parsha in the entire Vayikra. So congratulations, we're almost at the end of Vayikra. We've got just 2 prakim to go. Perek Havav continues in Parshas Bechukoisai. It started in Bahar, ends in Bechukoisai. What's taking place in chapter 26 in Bechukoisai? So you've got the famous brachas and klalas. So Moshe Rabbeinu is standing, telling the Yidden to not do the Averas, and if they do mitzvahs, their obedience will be rewarded and their Averas will be punished. So I imagine 2 nosh machines, and there's 2 crowds in front of each nosh machine. The nosh machine that has lots of candies, kosher, and of course very healthy, only healthy. Those are being squirted out to everyone who's keeping mitzvahs. And the other nosh machine, which is people who have served the Avodah Zarah and done Averas, so they get the curses. So I see that nosh machine firing little baby idols of stone and knocking out permanently anyone in front of them in that crowd. So you've got 2 crowds in front of 2 nosh machines. One nosh machine has lots of nosh, kosher, and of course very healthy, that's being squirted out to those who are keeping the mitzvahs. And then the other nosh machine is squirting out stone idols that break when they come into contact with the person who's done Avodah Zarah or any of the Averas that are mentioned in this parak, and it kills them. So that's my funny story for chapter Nosh. Chapter 27, Parshas Bechukoisai, last parak of the entire Vayikra, Leviticus. So in chapter 27, you essentially have Erechei Adam, Erechei Behema, Erechei Sadeh, and Arachim of Nechasim, of possessions. What's Erech mean? It's an estimation. A Kohen would estimate the value of a person who says, I want to donate my value to the Beis HaMikdash. So he wasn't weighed on a weighing machine, he was weighed, measured according to his age and gender. So in this picture you will see, if someone is between the age of 60 plus, then if it's a man, he's worth 15 shekel, a lady would be worth 10. If you've got a child that is 1 month old, all the way up to 5 years old, then if it's a boy, it's 5 shekel, and if it's a girl, she's worth 3 shekel. If you have someone who's over 5 till the age of 20, then for a boy it's 20 shekel, for a girl it's 10 shekel. So if they or someone who's their guardian donates their value to the Beis HaMikdash, these are the amounts in shkolim that the person is obligated to then donate to the Beis HaMikdash. The last one, and this is the most common one because it covers the most common age, is from 20 to 60 years old. Then if it's a male, he's worth 50 shkalim, and if it's a female, she's worth 30 shkalim. So that's called Erechei Adam. There's something called Erechei Behema as well. If you want to give the Erech, the estimated value of an animal, or buy it, or of your home, or your nechasim. All these items that you can donate to Hekdesh, to the Beis HaMikdash, to the Holy Temple, and the Kohen would come to estimate its value. The last item here you see someone who is with a rod putting red paint on the 10th sheep. So this is called Maisa Behema. Maisa from the word Esa, 10, Ma'esa, Ma'aseh, Ma'esa from 10. So there are actually 2 cards in this particular parak because there's a lot of information on the back of the cards, which covers what we just described. The estimation of a human being, of animals, of a home, of nechasim, actual possessions. And you've also got Erechei Asadeh of a field. You've got as well the animal tithes, which we just mentioned, Maisa Behema. And that takes us to the end of Vayikra. So how are we going to remember 27 nek is related to this information of Erechei Adam, Behema, Sadeh, Nechasim, etc. So nek 27, N is 2, hard K is 7. Remember, you can see all those 7s inside a K and the hard C there. E doesn't count, so the word nek is 27. So in 27, what I imagine is when the Kohen comes to check your value, he squeezes your neck. No, it's not strangle. He squeezes your neck, and what that does is force open a hatch. And the hatch sends out this little cuckoo clock. You've seen those little birdies like go cuckoo, 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 a little bit like myself. And what ends up happening is the cuckoo clock actually comes out of the neck and screams out the value of this person. So he squeezes the neck of the person or the child, the ish, and out comes the cuckoo clock and screams out the value. 50 shkalim, 30 shkalim, 20, 10, do I hear 5, do I hear 3? So depending on the age and gender, that's what the cuckoo clock is going to declare. Okay, well done. You have finally reached the end of Vayikra. You deserve a little siyum, perhaps some dark chocolate in my case. And after I've had a few pieces, I will come back and we'll do Bamidbar. Hold on tight.